founded the Lifestyle Dentist to help spread the preventive philosophy and lifestyle-centered approach to oral health. Oh, wait a second. Sorry. I'm simultaneously, okay. Hera, just one moment. One moment. Sorry, technical issue. Let me double check. Okay, yeah. So let's continue. I just wanted to make sure that everything is good with the broadcast and YouTube. So let's carry it on. So today we also have Dora Christodoulou, who is a member of the EU Youth Hub in Greece, but she is also a freelance researcher and policy analyst in government and public affairs. Currently, Dora is a candidate for the MA in International Relations and Diplomacy at the College of Europe in Belgium. And she holds a BA in European Studies and an MA degree in Global Political Economy. Dora's expertise lies in EU external relations, in trade cooperations and development. And also, Dora is experienced in the education sector, specifically in career guidance. She has worked closely on developing certain psychometric tools for educational outcomes. And I'm the Chief Communications Officer of We Are Innovation. I have the background in tech industry and media industry. I've worked with tier one media, such as Fox News, CNN, TechCrunch, and others, and such big clients as Uber and Karex crypto exchange platform. So in that regard, I know how important it is to push for the technology and innovations, and hopefully that today we will touch base on that properly. So I would like to start our conversation with a very basic yet important question. So what are the main non-academic factors that you ladies think that impact student performance? How would you define them?
So non-academic factors, I think we're probably looking at various different aspects, including socio-economic backgrounds. That's something which I'm really passionate about is nutrition, and how that links to oral health as well as oral health itself, and lifestyle factors as well that perhaps are overlooked. Things like physical exercise, connecting to nature, and sleep, all these factors that perhaps don't feature in an education system.
And perhaps if I may add to what Maria just mentioned in regards with nutrition, physical and mental health, I would also suggest that it's the home environment and the support in terms of background and the family that you get from your home when it comes to your socio-economic background as well, which I think that the freedom you have to making your own choices and whether this ends up to being a pressure from home or not, and in that regard, the support you receive overall.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that all these challenges, they exist for quite a long time. But however, recent studies and also the academic review, literature review that we recently conducted with We Are Innovation also showed that they evolved far beyond the boundaries of the conventional curriculum. So as we are on them, let's break it into parts. So the first feature that I would like to discuss with you is actually the mental state of the student, because we know that academic success depends a lot on that. So our review was based on studies of student mobility. For example, such programs as Erasmus Plus. And that showed a significant difference between age, frequency, reasons for school dropouts. That includes mental health, bullying, social situations. Based on your experience, how would you comment on that? What are the main differences?
Perhaps if I may start, in my take and my personal experience, I've had the privilege, let's say, to study in a lot of different institutions that I've come in contact with people with different backgrounds, but also different ages, both in my bachelor's and my master's. And I think that it depends pretty much on the age part. For instance, when it comes to younger people at the bachelor's level, I think it's a big, the challenge that people experience when transitioning to a new environment, reaching this whole work-life balance, having your own home, being away from your friends, meeting new people, is a very big aspect that people just find it overwhelming and may decide to just drop out or take some time off just to manage to handle this overwhelming amount of information coming into their lives. While now at a later stage, what I'm noticing with my peers is that people just decide to set on different priorities. It might be a good work opportunity. Some people decide to, or that comes along, that they decide to proceed with having a family or just having different social priorities that it makes them drop out. But at the same time, speaking about these different priorities, there is this big expectation versus reality gap that I've been noticing myself. And I've had a lot of friends that themselves dropped out or changed programs because that didn't fit with them and they had completely different expectations, which I think also comes from your background and what you have learned so far and what you expect. And honestly speaking, I myself, when I first studying, I was so overwhelmed. I failed my first course and I thought, okay, oh my God, I don't know English. I don't know what to do. I don't know anything. I'm gonna drop out. That's not made for me. So it's also this, it's a personal aspect as well of personal traits of having perseverance and again the support of the family that I mentioned earlier that some people might or not have that contributes significantly to dropout levels, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe expectations meeting the reality can be very different. Perhaps institutions don't communicate what is to be expected or what the reality is of joining a certain course, and the reality is more difficult or more challenging in ways that were not expected. So maybe there's a disparity in communication there between students and institutions. And not having support at home. I think if it's different values, I think home values are really important. And if the value of education is perhaps not supported in the home environment, it's then very hard to pursue on your own terms something that maybe is not celebrated in your home or social background. So that can certainly present a challenge, I think. And that's maybe dependent on your socio-economic background as well. I can imagine there's a big disparity there. So, and I guess across Europe, there are different systems. I think they will explore different countries, have different dropout rates, and maybe culturally there are different values as well based on education and whether you're from a rural community or an urban community. And there may be more expectation that you start working younger if you're in a rural setting, and there's not maybe as much value on pursuing an education system or a more academic route.
Yeah, I see your point, and I agree with both of them. I think that there is generally a problem of educational complexity because while there are certain taken standards of the education in the EU, most of them are customized for different countries. And there is also different age when people on average graduate from schools, and that also creates a certain gap in the countries within the EU. That's why there is a huge debate on whether the education should be standardized and brought to only, one point. Plus, the social and economic factors are also very different. And as you mentioned, coming from the rural community, set certain priorities quite often for you, while when you're coming from a big city, apparently you understand that getting a certain educational degree will allow you to pursue certain opportunities that are simply more available in a big city. Plus, our studies revealed that there was a big difference between reasons of why children on average, and I'm in high school by that, drop out from schools. And poverty is actually a very important factor. And I think that when in a very tender age you are obliged, or maybe not obliged, but you have to support your family economically, then probably your personal goals, your future career is not that important because your main priorities are not set up. And in that regard, I think that it would be really good if educational system could be improved generally, and that there would be a smart career counseling, or that there were any programs who could support children from economically vulnerable families and groups. To continue that, there is another challenge, and this challenge is neurodivergence. And I know that some teachers, some representatives of the educational system are a bit skeptical because in any case they need to standardize education processes. But I think that still there is a big impact on concentration and overall academic performance. So have you ever worked with students? Maybe, Dora, you have some peers with neurodivergence, or how in general you think what could be the strategies that could help these students to succeed in academia?
Well, I do think that nowadays there has been an increased understanding and awareness around neurodivergence, which is very important. I have worked with students, and mostly on my bachelor's, and I also as part of my one master's. And I think it's great that different institutions initiate those individualized learning plans and different processes, let's say, that show some sort of flexibility when it comes to their own needs, which kind of incorporates and becomes more inclusive the educational system, either that is extended time for exams or extended time for papers, or giving them the space and time they may need when in a large classroom, which I think is great because that does not only help them, but also helps raise awareness and create a more inclusive environment around them and makes it more structured in a way. I do think, however, that we yet have a lot to do in order to improve the environment and situation for people with neurodivergence, because it's not always obvious, of course, and there are different levels, different forms, and there is still a lot of stigma, I would say, which of course differs per country. My experience from high school in Greece, for instance, was that people that needed what they called special education were really stigmatized by that, while here there is a very structured system, which I think should be more of a cross-border, it should be a policy, a EU policy, or something more standardized which would contribute to raise awareness and also improve educational outcomes for those people as well. And also introducing more flexible assessment methods, because it's not all about, at the end of the day, it's not about the grade you'll get at the exam, but what transferable skills you have throughout the way, which should, in my opinion, at least, be incorporated in order to having different understandings, in which it's not just I can study for 10 hours straight and then take my exam, because it doesn't work for every person, because everyone's brain just works differently, and that's the mental aspect and mental health aspect that should be in any case considered. But I'm sure that Maria knows more on that, so just leave her the floor.
So yeah, my experience is more with treating patients with neurodivergence who are maybe present different challenges as a dentist, as somebody who's treating people who certain environments, certain noises, certain things will be very upsetting, very difficult to work with. So I think it requires a lot of patience. I think it requires extra time. I think you mentioned that, for examinations and for these sort of more traditional approaches to assessment, yes, there should be some flexibility with that. There probably needs to be flexibility with the environment that they're in as well, because I think there are environmental challenges for neurodivergent people that maybe we don't see, and trying to create spaces where they can escape to, they can maybe feel more in control, have time outside, perhaps trying to connect them with the outdoors as a mechanism to readjust and to calm people in more stressful environments who are neurodivergent. I think I think you're right. There's maybe more that we can be doing. There needs to be more understanding from a point of view as the provider, the educator, or the provider of care, how we can best support these people so that they feel celebrated, as well as just being able to adjust to the environment. Because I think a lot of the time it's trying to fit them in to an already existing system, but maybe we need to be trying to design a system that works for them, as well as with the flexibility for students without neurodivergence. So there needs to be maybe an approach that could look at even things like how buildings are designed, how classrooms are set up, flexible start times, flexible assessment. I think it needs quite a holistic approach in order to feel that you can get the best out of neurodivergent people. I think probably, in the UK, we do try and be very inclusive, but I think there's probably not enough understanding about how we can best support these people. So it would be good to increase awareness, I think, of what's needed and why they need to be in certain environments, and to try and break the stigma and to try and understand the differences and how we can work with them, rather than maybe people not understanding that the environment can be difficult for a neurodivergent person. So I definitely think that my experiences with my own children is they sometimes don't understand why an individual gets what may seem to them like more attention or a different environment, or something which is perhaps not communicated as to how needs can be different. So I think that's an element that maybe needs to be improved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that also there is a problem of neurodivergent students quite often being undiagnosed. And getting back to the days when I was in high school or at the university, I still assume that I might have the ADHD, which is still undiagnosed. But for me, it was always complicated to concentrate, because if I hear one external distraction, someone talking, the bird flying, anything, my focus will go there. And then I feel like my focus is going places, and then it results in a challenge with concentration. And while I also know that neurodivergence is a spectrum, and that involves lots of many things, not only ADHD. But I'm talking about ADHD because it just hits closer to the house. I also know that these people are quite fast when they're working with tough deadlines. And I think that this is something that maybe educational systems should take into account, because you mentioned the flexibility. And I think that from one hand, it's really good, because then it helps people to refocus. And probably if they're more flexible, they can adjust to different schedules, to different classes, to different courses. And, the brain-computer will work with a little less stress. But at the same time, I think that it's very necessary to conduct some research that would include the voices of students who actually face neurodivergence, so that they could help educational systems to develop better approaches. Because maybe for some of them, tough deadlines will work so much better, because then the dopamine will just be fulfilled completely. One of the aspects that also our research revealed and our literature review revealed is that one of the strategies could be actually co-learning. When you involve students who have a very high academic performance, and you ask them to help out their peers, because then the educational process will be more informal, and maybe the issues that sometimes students don't know how to address to their teachers or mentors or whoever else, they would feel more comfortable to tell to their peers. So this is one of the ideas. But however, I think that there could be a whole scope of improvements that could be implemented. Okay, let's move on. So there is also a health aspect, which is critical for the education. So what do you think about nutrition? How does it impact cognitive and academic performance?
So this is an area I find really interesting. I think it's really important to acknowledge the importance of nutrition, and I think it's overlooked in the education system. It's actually overlooked in many institutions, I think, and facilities. And it's important to remember that our bodies are connected. So what we eat doesn't just affect one part of the body, it affects our whole body. Everything is linked. And this is where my take on how oral health, your mouth impacts the rest of your body, is really important. So what we eat, impacts our gut health, it impacts our immune health, it impacts our brain health, our oral health. It all is implicated. So it's really important to, in order to function in a highly academic setting, or in a setting where you need to use your brain, you need to be focused, you need to concentrate. If you're not well nourished, to sustain that level of concentration, to sustain enough energy, is really challenging. So I think diet needs to be really looked at as to what we eat, our lifestyle as well, and how that impacts our health, as well as aspects like hydration. There are definitely specific nutrients that we need that influence cognition or brain health. And there are also bodily processes, metabolic processes, hormones that again are going to have an influence on our brain health and our performance ultimately. So we can sort of focus on a few nutrients that spring to mind when it comes to brain health. One of the ones which is really important is omega-3 fatty acids, which are the healthy fats which you find in fish. It's mainly oily fish. So I always say, remember the kind of acronym SMASH, where you've got your salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines and herring. So those are your kind of main 5 oily fish. And it's really important for helping to maintain brain connections, to kind of keep making new connections. So that kind of rewiring and that ability to learn, to have memory. And these omega-3s they're actually really only found in the ones that have the evidence to impact your brain health, are the ones in the oily fish. You do get plant-based ones as well, but it's the EPA and the DHA, which are the ones found in the fish, that evidence shows that the health outcomes improve with these particular omega-3s. So there's a lot of plant-based omega-3s as well, but actually they need to convert in your body to the more active types, which actually our bodies are very inefficient at doing. So it is actually important to have the omega-3s from fish, or you can get fish oils, you can take supplements in order to support your brain health. And that's something that is maybe not widely known. So it's really important to try and understand that there are aspects to diet. A balanced diet needs to incorporate certain things. Protein is another one, which if we add protein to our meals, certain amino acids can help to affect your brain function. So it helps to balance, regulate your mood as well. So in an environment where you're trying to learn, it can help to modulate a more regulated feeling, mood, and alleviate stress in perhaps a stressful learning environment. And hydration is another one that can affect your mood. If you're even mildly dehydrated, it can affect your ability to concentrate and your energy levels, which again, if you're not eating a balanced, regular meals, you can sort of experience fatigue. And again, you're just not going to be able to sustain an effective environment for your mind and for your body. So a balanced diet is really important. And then the micronutrients within that as well, which are also important. So things like iron, which can facilitate your oxygenation of the brain, antioxidants, all these micronutrients that, again, a high diet in fruit and vegetables. So you want to kind of encourage lots of fresh fruit and vegetables and all sorts of whole grains as well, which it's just trying to encourage people to understand what will help to fuel their body, but also fuel their mind, and that kind of that all holistic connection.
Yeah, thank you for such a detailed comment. Dora, do you have something to add on that?
I do think that Maria just covered pretty much everything on the crucial role of nutrition. I would, from a student perspective, I think that's the number one thing that's usually neglected. It is just you don't think about your nutrition. And personally, in my first years as a student, I would completely disregard it and just thought that I'm just gonna drink an extra cup of coffee and I'd be okay if I skipped a meal. And honestly, I could feel at the end of the day the fatigue and why my brain would not work. I couldn't sleep properly, and that's also a very important aspect that affects your sleeping schedule and so on. And then I felt like I discovered the world when I kind of started taking care of my diet, and then I would stop eating a bit earlier, and then I could sleep properly. I would wake up on time, and I would be way more productive. So it's a whole different world you experience once your nutrition is really in line, once you're hydrated, when you limit your caffeine intake, which is of course important, but I used to drink 8 cups of coffee a day back then, and I don't know how I did it. I think when it comes with awareness and information, that you kind of get into that loop of understanding your body better as well. And for the rest, I think Maria covered everything, but it's the number one thing that people completely disregard, sorry, and should be more informed about, because they tell you, oh, sleep and eat, and there's not really the time to sleep and eat. So there should be sort of the aspect of taking into consideration when planning, when organizing yourself, and something that people don't do and should.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. And Maria, thanks for covering that in so many detail. I should learn from that, by the way. But I think that there should be a certain culture. Like, I don't think that students are being taught enough on how to eat properly. And while you are young, it's so much easier because you will be productive. Even if you had a sleepless night and then you had 8 cups of coffee, then probably you will still be on this adrenaline and you will go and study, and then probably you will do extracurricular activities. Maybe you also work, and then you will also have some time and space and energy to socialize, maybe to party. But then in a couple of years, you won't be able to do so anymore. So the earlier you start, the better. And I also think that it's also the question of money, especially in high school. Maybe at the university, the situation is slightly better because most of the students also have some gigs. But in middle school, in high school, quite often, if you have some extra money, probably you will neglect your lunch and you will save money for something. Maybe you will go to the cinema, or maybe you will go and buy some junk food, some energy drinks, you will buy some pizza, because this is a kind of routine. You will meet with your friends and catch up, and you will probably feel like little rebels when you are eating all that, consuming, even if your parents are most evidently against of that. But I think that it should be communicated in a very available way why it is important, because then you are contributing to your health, and basically you're investing in your future when you will have much lower energy. I'm experimenting with my diet right now. I'm no longer a student, and I feel like I need it. And indeed, my sleeping schedule became better, and life simply became better. I feel like I invented something, honestly. Okay, let's move on to the next question, and probably Maria, you can start again here.
Yeah.
So oral health, it's also a very important aspect. How can oral health, and probably this is the point that is not being brought up enough, how can it help the cognitive enhancement? And there is also a research about the positive aspect of using sugar-free chewing gum.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that this has been spoken about, because I think oral health is generally overlooked in health. And I'm definitely in academic society, I can't imagine that oral health is featured. But I like what you were saying. I think we need to create habits in people, from a very young age, that they make the right choices, that they want to make the right choices about healthy eating, and understanding how that is going to impact their health long term, and that's their oral health as well. And like I was saying before, your oral health, your mouth is so connected to the rest of your body, and actually you can be described as the window to your body, as also a mirror to what's going on in the rest of your body. So if oral health is neglected, it can lead to other problems in the rest of your body. So it's linked to, it has an inflammatory link to the rest of your body. So people who have inflammatory conditions in their mouth, that can often translate to inflammatory conditions elsewhere in their body, and that means things like increased risk of type 2 diabetes, which actually is quite surprisingly now becoming prevalent in children, and quite young children. And type 2 diabetes is completely the result of diet and lifestyle. There's no genetic element to it. So if we're seeing that in young children, it's a real worry that diet and lifestyle are being neglected, and the impact can start to, you can show it in the mouth as well. So it has a bi-directional relationship. What we see going on in the mouth can reflect the wider body, and also things going on like with diabetes or heart disease often can translate to what we can see in the mouth. So if you have a stable, healthy oral environment, often that can reflect a healthy body as well. So the two are so intertwined. The other thing we have to remember with oral health is that a mouth that is healthy we can take for granted, but a mouth that is unhealthy can be debilitating. It can be painful, it can be distressing. Young children that are experiencing toothache or having to go to experience pain throughout their day, or living with a certain amount of inflammation in their mouth, is discomfort. And this level of chronic inflammation that we can see has a negative effect on our mood. So if you're battling this, then the impact can be on your mental well-being as well, increasing your levels of stress and discomfort, and then the ability to learn and absorb from the environment that you're in. So having a healthy oral environment can be what can help to encourage a good learning environment. I guess the other side of oral health is the sort of social side of it as well. So if children or young people have experienced bad breath or poor oral hygiene, or poor appearance of their teeth from perhaps a less healthy mouth, or some issues, it can impact sort of social interactions and welfare in an education system. So it may not be perceived well by others, and that may lead to sort of feelings of being outcast, and perhaps an unwillingness to be in that learning environment. So it has huge social implications as well. Especially as you say, as we get older, we want to encourage good habits, because it might be that when you're young you can get away with a certain amount, but if you continue those habits as you get older, then you can end up with severe gum disease, you can end up with tooth loss, you can end up with quite worrying levels of oral disease, which is quite debilitating in later life. So we want young people to be aware of their oral health and making choices, dietary choices and lifestyle choices that support it throughout their life. And in the education system, then I think there needs to be strategies that can help support that. And you mentioned sugar-free chewing gum. So I think a lot of it is also education. I think there needs to be more education about the importance of maintaining good oral hygiene, the importance of diet. And maybe that does need to somehow infiltrate into a system. So, we're not just creating an academic population, we're creating an educated population who understand how to look after their own well-being, their mental well-being, their general health, as well as the subject that they're learning about. So maybe there needs to be some sort of infiltration throughout the education system about nutrition, about how to brush your teeth. I mean, the basics, which surprisingly a huge amount of people don't know. And I see the outcome of that when people say to me, no one's ever told me how to brush my teeth. And I think, well, that's true. Who would have told you? Unless your dentist is going to sit down and show you, which most of the time they don't, people think they're doing the right thing and they're not. So yes, I think there is definitely a huge opportunity for education. But then there are strategies that can be implemented, like sugar-free chewing gum, which, yes, absolutely can have a role in helping to reduce risk of dental or oral disease. So there is definitely evidence that chewing sugar-free chewing gum, it stimulates your saliva, which is basically like your mouth's natural buffer against insults or an acidic environment. It helps to rebalance the microbiome. It contains defense proteins to help to restrict microbial growth. So by stimulating that, you're helping to neutralize your oral environment. So there is evidence that children or people who maybe chew after meal times or between meal times and stimulate that saliva flow can reduce their risk of dental decay. So it absolutely is a tool that can be used. It's not that it's sugar-free. And I think it's important that it's not seen as the panacea to solve everything. I think there are many aspects that we need to look at and educate on. But chewing itself, the actual action of chewing, is also being shown to relax and to sort of stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So it helps to maybe create a calmer environment. So there may be something in that as well, which, as if students are in a stressful environment, that may have a benefit. So it definitely has a potential role.
Oh, that's a lot, Maria. Thank you for that. It's super detailed. And again, this is the information that, for example, when I was in the high school or when I was at the university, it was something that simply was not delivered.
Yeah, I think this is really true. I think today it's rarely delivered. And I think it needs to be. I think that there's a huge gap in what maybe we think people know and what they actually know when it comes to looking after their own well-being and their health. And I think there are tools that the education system maybe has to have a little bit of responsibility to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, moving on. Of course, Dora, if you don't have to add anything on the oral health, let's also discuss such aspects as good sleep and mindfulness, because I think that first of all, on the physical level, healthy sleep really impacts us. And again, when you're 16, 17, 18, in your early 20s, probably don't notice it that much. But again, in a couple of years, it will hit you and you won't be able to stay overnight any longer. And if so, well, it won't do you anything well on the next day. And same applies to mindfulness, because right now we have lots of apps that teach us mindfulness, 5-minute meditation per day, and how to cope with stress. But this is quite often something that is not being delivered well to the students, and especially for teens, it is very important to understand what's happening with becoming adults and how to cope with their emotions and daily stress in a healthy way.
Yeah, perhaps I can go ahead with this question for now. I do consider that mindfulness has become a more relevant topic in the past years, and especially sleep. I totally echo what you were just saying, Tatiana. Still, a few years back, my friends would be like, "Oh, if I don't get my 7-8 hours of sleep, I cannot function." I was like, "Oh, come on, we're young," and no, we're not anymore, apparently, because we just need your sleep, and it's another aspect of our literally daily life that we just disregard completely. And without sleep, the brain just doesn't have the time to just decompress in a way. But at the same time, with mindfulness, I myself only started doing yoga and meditation when I was in the middle of my bachelor's. And in fact, this was an initiative of my university at the time, which also kind of suggests that there has been this initiative and understanding that mindfulness is a very big aspect of decompressing. We live in an era of information. Your brain just never stops getting information, even when we go on social media, it's just gonna see something else from me. A story, a news agency, a video that's just gonna be something that's happening in the world around us. That's just a lot at the moment. So the fact that the university itself offered these free also, by the way, yoga and meditation. And we also had this mindfulness box that you could just get in, book your slot and stay in to just, switch off for a few hours. It was just so valuable. And it was the first time in my life I discovered the value of just sitting there and for a few minutes, a few hours, whatever you chose, whatever your slot was, that it was okay for your brain to be empty. It was okay to not talk with anyone. And this taught me so much the value of cognitive function not only in sleep, because of course sleep is valuable, but at the same time in the middle of your day when you're overwhelmed or just packed up with information in your head, that you just need to step back and also communicate that openly. Let people know that, at this point I just need to decompress. And this is becoming more and more open. There's been more awareness. It's become, at least in the universities that I have studied, we have these well-being workshops that you just, even at the bar, we have this bar here at the College of Europe. And then if you feel overwhelmed or get social anxiety, whatever, we have this safe space that you can just go there and stay by yourself. Or there will be a person whose volunteering job, of course, is to be there and help you, to help you discuss, and let all this out. So it's becoming more and more relevant. There has been more and more information, and it kind of improves the quality of it definitely improves the quality of your life. It has personally, for myself, improved my sleep, but also it helps me wake up in the morning. Sometimes I will do it in the evening. Sometimes I will do it when I wake up, which is more of a stretching / yoga meditation. It's just puts you in the setting to start your day more peacefully. And then you're ready to start the day and let all the information just pump in. And it kind of, for myself, differentiates my body with my brain, because they're connected, of course, but at the same time I let my brain disconnect for a bit, because it gets so much information and stress and so on every day. Of course, I have not mastered the skill yet, or the practice. It would be amazing if I could do that. But at the same time, when you're in a very hectic environment, I live in a building with 56 other people, and at some point at the end of the day, I really need my time and space. And it also helps kind of to regulate your emotions and your feelings, to ground in a way and mute everything that's happening, which for me has been really it has improved my sleep quality, my day-to-day quality. And people always tell me, how do you have so much energy? And I think that the main reason that I'm managing to actually attend also social events is because I set my boundary to say, I need to do my yoga, I need to do my meditation, I need to switch off at the moment. And if I may add one last point, I think this also helps on the immune function, because there have been points in my life also recently that I did feel my immune system giving up on me, reaching the floor. And then I would see myself having more and more health issues. I was constantly sick. So in that regard as well, like if the brain is not connected to the body, it's impossible in my own experience to just have a balanced lifestyle, let's say. So it has made me more productive and more efficient for sure. And it just has helped me set my own boundaries. And I'm very, very glad to see that institutions have taken the initiative to incorporate it in their almost in their curriculum. Because from the beginning of the year, we get all those lectures about well-being. Come talk to this expert. We have psychology group or individual therapy sessions if we feel overwhelmed and so on. So I feel like the idea is there, the initiatives are there. Perhaps it should be more generalized in a generalized system, because for sure it differs per country. But it is definitely, there has been more awareness and more initiatives, which are more than valuable. And I'm only saying that because I had never thought of it before until I started practicing it myself.
That's so great to hear. I think I wasn't aware that these initiatives are happening, and I think it's music to my ears. It's great because I think there is so much value in it. When I was at university, that was not there was no option. But I'm a little bit older than you. But so it's great to know that that is progressing, and there is this understanding that we need to support our well-being and our mental health, and sleep is, I think when I was a student, it was almost like you were celebrated for having little sleep. The less, the more partying you did, and the less sleep, and the more you could fit into your life, the better it was. And it was so bad. It was so bad for you. And it's good to hear that kind of understanding and that education of the value of sleep is shifting. And now people are saying, actually, no, I need my 8 hours sleep, because I think there is now so much evidence that sleep is, as you were saying, it's decompressing. It allows your brain to recover. It sorts everything out from the day. You need it in order to function. So if you're deficient on sleep in quality or in quantity, then you're gonna have reduced attention, ability to learn, ability to concentrate, make poor decisions, and all these things are not conducive to a good learning environment. So I think absolutely sleep is essential to have a sort of a reduced stress in your life. And I think you need to I think be quite disciplined and say, this is my routine, and have that confidence that if you go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time, that's for you. That needs to be something that is supported, and if there's more education on it, more people will accept that. So I think it's all great to hear, but the mindfulness side of it and the yoga. I'm a yoga teacher, so it's so great to hear that you've taken it up and you're seeing the benefits of it. I'm passionate about it. I feel that for me, it was my savior. I felt like it gave me this headspace that I never had. I couldn't find a way to access, and suddenly you create an environment where you're focused on the now, the moment. You're connecting into your body, but you're also disconnecting from the craziness of your day, and all this information that you were saying is just surrounding us. It's an opportunity to switch off, and we need that. And so to find an opportunity or to present an option, I think, in an education system is really important. And whatever that may be, whether it's, as you say, a pod where you can go and escape to, or it's an outdoor space that you can take a walk into, because as long as you can find the ability to connect, to connect you to nature, can disconnect you from all the other stuff that's going on. Again, I think that's quite a powerful tool. But but yoga has this sort of wonderful holistic approach, which is what I love. It supports your physical well-being, but also your mental well-being. It's mindful, but it also helps to reduce stress. And there's evidence now that it reduces the stress hormone cortisol. It helps us to manage our mental well-being. It can reduce. It can actually treat depression. It can help to. I mean, it's almost something that's now prescribed, or I think it should be prescribed more for people who are suffering from mental illness, and it allows you to have that opportunity to decompress, to stress, but to focus on sort of looking into your body and starting just to connect to yourself. So I think it's a really important tool that it should be accessible. I think the thing with yoga is it is accessible to everybody because it's your own practice, it's your own. There's no competition, non-competitive. You're not looking at anyone else. It's you, and there's working with your breath and the ability of your breath to control how you feel, to actually feel empowered that you have control of your breath can be a really useful tool to manage stress and to in times when you are feeling anxious or overwhelmed. I think if you can come back to your breath, it is a hugely powerful tool. So I think yoga maybe opens the opportunity for you to use these different tools, which again are lifelong skills that I think it's important to start early, and then hopefully they can carry on through life.
Tanya, if I may add one more thing on that.
Yeah, of course.
I think one thing that's very valuable for students is that we've always discussed with my friends and peers about how paradoxical it becomes, the fact that, yeah, the college tells us or the university tells us about mental health and take it easy and so on and so forth. But then at the same time, they give us no break, literally, that you don't get a single second to you're in class all day and then you have a million deadlines. And I think for me, that's the most valuable lesson, that you kind of through this process, you learn to set your own boundaries and accept that it's okay to take it slow. It's okay to sleep now, and it's better to wake up tomorrow early. Of course, it works differently for every person, but I know there is this irony because I have experienced it myself. And I said, yeah, of course I need to meditate now, but who's going to write my essay? But then for me, this was also such a long process of learning that this is my boundary. And then I had this point that I would stay up instead until 4 a.m. And at this point, I have even double the things to do. And at 11, I'll be in my bed and I'll wake up and tomorrow is a new day and I'll do whatever I can. So I think that we hear so many people saying that they're having a burnout. And honestly, that's right now such a commonly used term that I myself don't even know what defines a burnout anymore. But I think that this process of setting boundaries and coming in contact with your brain and your body is a way of really moving on in this period that the brain never switches off. And I myself, I'm a very hyperactive person. So at first I found it very hard to sit down and do yoga or meditation because it was I couldn't even stay still. And then my instructor was telling me, it's okay if you can't stay still. You can still do yoga if you can't stay still, just all the things you said about the breath and so on and so forth. But I think it's really the irony on the one hand, but then a way of learning what your boundaries are and where your brain and body are. So of course, I'm sure you're the expert on that and not me, but from my personal experience, it has been very valuable on learning where to stop and how far my body and my brain can go.
You mentioned a very important point here about knowing and understanding your limits, and I totally agree. This is the same thing that I faced, and I also think that there is a gap between educational approaches. And of course, we are talking about the EU mostly here. But for example, I graduated from the university in Ukraine, and I don't think that they paid enough of attention to mindfulness, mental health aspects, at least in my university. And I think that that was a very important thing because, for example, in a lot of the EU high educational establishments, you are not allowed to work full-time while learning full-time. In Ukraine, lots of students do. So that means that your typical day would start that you will have classes, let's say 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. If you're working full-time, lots of students work full-time. They spend time there. During all this time, students are usually worried about essays that they need to write, and probably they would like to catch a break and to meditate a little bit, but they simply have no time because the priority would be to earn some more money, because you also need to adjust to a certain living standard, especially if you are studying in a different city, bigger city, which also means certain expenses. And that's good if parents can support you, but what if not? And then you will probably be counting money till the end of the month, and probably you won't be eating the healthy food, and probably will be surviving on noodles and other stuff. So then there is a question how to handle all that. And also there is a social demand that probably your early 20s are your most productive years, when you have most of energy, when in most cases you don't have family, don't have kids, and you need to invest into yourself so that in your 30s you will get the results of that, and those results will be fruitful. But then there are physical limits that your body simply has because you are an alive human being. And that's when you really need to learn to tell yourself stop. And actually, I also came up to that later. And sometimes I still catch myself on the thought, okay, I can do a little walk for my mental health, but I could be writing something during that time. Or I can go for a walk and I will be sitting by the pond and I will be watching ducks swimming in a pond, and the view will be so relaxing, but I will be editing a text that I'm writing. And then there is very necessary to set up when you make a full stop, simply because you need to recharge. And turned out that the world didn't collapse that it would. Now, in fact, you're just taking a pause, and then you are more productive, because if you get some rest, you will do this same thing so much faster, because otherwise you will be procrastinating. And you will be procrastinating not because you are a horrible worker, not because you are a lazy student, not because you don't have any personal, academic, or professional ambition, but simply because you are tired, and basically you are stealing this time from your own self to recharge. But since you don't allow yourself, you feel guilt, and then you are getting into this vicious circle.
You're right. I think, yeah, you have to be disciplined with yourself and say, this is what I need. I'm gonna do it for myself. I'm gonna go outside and take a walk for 20 minutes rather than just carry on doing something which I've been sat at for a few hours. And then, yeah, I think you will come back and feel recharged better. But I think you have to instill those values in people and say, that's okay. And actually, that's something that we would encourage you to do, and to almost build in these breaks into a system and say, this is you have 20 minutes, go for a walk, do something. You need like movement breaks. I think even if you're sitting, again, for your physical health, if you're sitting in the same place, and if for your posture and staring at screens, all these things which we're doing for long periods of time, I think there needs to be recognition that this is actually not good for us long term. So that, and as we work we go on from students to working environments, I think we need to be able to say, actually, oh no, I'm not going to sit in an office without moving for 8 hours. We have to allow ourselves to move, allow ourselves to come back, reconnect, be more productive, fuel properly, have available food that's not just fast food. There should be options for fresh fruit and snacks that are going to actually help you rather than slow you down, make you feel sluggish. So I think there needs to be some structure that can help support our own boundaries as well.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that we are slightly running out of time, so I will ask one more question, because I also think that it's very necessary to touch base on that, and then we will have a short Q&A session, because I see that we have a couple of questions in the YouTube comment session, and I think that it would be great to give a personal take or an advice to those who are watching us. So my next question, and I will really try to put it shorter than I initially supposed to. So social and political initiatives, because if you want to build a sustainable educational system, it is very necessary um, to contribute to it from different angles. So what role do policymakers play in addressing non-academic impacts and education? And whether you know any initiatives, programs that are focused on mitigating these effects, or maybe you would like some initiatives to be implemented, and so then what would that be? Why would that be?
Maybe I can start. I'll try to keep it very brief because I see we're running out of time indeed. First, on the policymaker side, I think that's the most important part that they have in addressing those challenges is, first of all, setting the educational priorities. There should be a shift of paradigm from purely education being seen as studying, taking my exams, graduating, going in the job market, and incorporating social aspects and the fast-changing environment in which we're living. We are seeing so much nowadays: environment, climate change, social wars, crisis, and we have direct access in all that. So I think in setting the educational priorities, all those things that we've been discussing this whole time in terms of mental health, nutrition, physical health, sleep, mindfulness, all those things should be considered and be incorporated in the curricula cross-border. Of course, it's hard to make it global. It's nearly impossible, in fact, speaking now in my political side about national sovereignties and so on and so forth. But from the EU side, there could be initiatives. I believe you also asked, Tanya, whether there have been initiatives. And as far as I know, besides the well, I think there's this European strategy for universities and the Digital Education Action Plan, that those are merely promoting a European way of life, which is good on the one hand in exchange of information and sharing of best practices. What I mentioned, for instance, that in both my Dutch universities, that I had this whole mental health awareness campaigns, information sharing, and so on. So this is a best practice that could be shared to the other EU member states, for instance. The same applies to my university in Belgium. But as far as I know, at least there hasn't been one, central decision or central policy addressing the issue. It's more decentralized and institutionalized at different universities, which of course is important, and perhaps a bottom-up approach is equally good. But in order to make it, let's say, implementable, it should be more centralized. And then getting back to the neurodivergence, there should be more inclusive education, as we said, which is the easiest of what we have discussed to kind of implement in terms of a policy, to initiate a policy to make education more flexible and inclusive for students at all levels, both high school and at the university level. There are people, because of this stigma, it goes both ways, that students should also be familiar with whether they are in the spectrum or not, but also be willing to seek the support that they need, because I've personally known people that they've had neurodivergence and they just avoided requesting the support that they needed from the university, and then they ended up failing their courses, and then that would also impact their mental health, and that builds up. So it's this awareness and this community engagement that's necessary. So if I personally had to suggest or bring up a policy initiative, would be this holistic development on mental health, like a comprehensive and standardized mental health policy system. That would be ideal, but then in practice, there are different things that come up that I'm not going to get into now, don't worry. But I'm going to leave the floor to Maria.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Dora, is absolutely right. I 100% agree with you that I think the education system almost needs to be reframed in that we're offering an education on all these different aspects. So you're not just going in on your subject, doing the academics, coming out with your grades. You're coming out as an educated human being with social skills, with skills to understand how to maintain your well-being, how to maintain your health, how to support your working environment for the future, how to make choices that are going to result in a happy long working life. So yeah, I think there should be elements of education throughout, that we educate on nutrition and we educate on sleep and mindfulness and oral health. That all needs to be part of a system that is perhaps, yes, as you say, centralized, and that is, it's almost a curricula that we're all doing that. So we're by doing that, inevitably we're going to improve health outcomes for, I mean, ideally a global population. And then I think there has to be an element of a system that, I think what you were saying before, Dra, about how, they may talk about it, but are they actually implementing it within the system? So you might talk about mindfulness, but you have no time for it. So then there needs to be the structure that's implemented. So you need to practice what they're preaching. So we're going to have, there'll be breaks for mindfulness, there'll be flexible working times, or start times, or assessment for neurodivergent people. We'll offer, junk food is not going to be easily accessible. The only options are going to be healthy, nutritious food. So people are going to be driven towards making the best choices, as well as it just being completely self-governed. So I think there's two aspects of how policy can affect the education system, from an education and then a sort of strategic changing the structure of what's seen as a normal education working day. But yeah, the one thing that, if I had to say one thing, I think probably getting rid of all these vending machines and junk food and fizzy drinks, things which appear to be in schools and education systems, universities, everywhere. Why they're there? They do nothing apart from, they'll give you an energy high and then you'll get the drop. So it's bad for your mental health, for your physical health, your oral health, all of it. I think they should be taken away, replaced with, fresh fruit and vegetable bars, or, water hydration stations, stuff that we need to know that this is what's good for us. Lots of outdoor spaces. But yeah, that would be the dream.
I think that all of these aspects are important. On my side, I would also add the point that it's really necessary to address socio-economic disparities, because there are lots of so-called disadvantaged students. And that's why it is necessary to give students equal opportunities, regardless of their social background, economic background. But also there are many things to work on, and probably we didn't touch base on that much. And I know that there is a whole separate topic for discussion on that. But also there are programs of bullying, for example. So that means that there should be implemented strategies to prevent that. There should be the promotion of mental health awareness, as we already mentioned that. And in fact, there should be the access for appropriate support services, which right now is not that highly available, at least not in all countries and not in all educational institutions. Plus, as we discussed before, there is a social reason for dropout. So I think that it's really necessary to develop these policies that could mitigate the effects of poverty and the social exclusions. So then it will be the reasonable ensurement that all children have an equal chance to succeed in academia and to build their future.
Mm-hmm.
And one last point, and probably we can ask a couple of questions that we have, and that will let us go. I think it's also very important to address the relevance of quality education to labor market, and in fact to promote future employability. Because when children graduate from schools, or when students graduate from high schools, they simply don't know what to do. And that's why I think that it is very necessary to collaborate with various stakeholders, employers, industry representatives, or I don't know, maybe to align curricula with the needs of the job market. And the education not to be, only nominal, that you study something basic, but also to provide students with necessary skills for their future careers.
It's totally a very valuable point. And I'm sure that learning books by heart is a very hard skill to learn. But at the same time, also Maria mentioned it earlier, that at the end of the day, we need to face and be valuable and productive members of this society. And that's where we should also have emotional intelligence for that, which is something that's really lacking in our educational system.
Yeah, of course. Because when you are coming to the job market, like, yeah, you can know poems by heart, and that's important and necessary if you want to be a culturally developed human being. But at the same time, no one tells you how to negotiate your wages, how to write the resume, and how to deal with conflict situation in the office, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Life.
So, yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 questions so far. Let me see how many people are still with us. 3 people are with us. So a couple of questions. First question that we have on YouTube. In terms of nutrition, how can students who usually survive on instant noodles start to discover new recipes which are cheap, nutritious, and relatively quick to make?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. There needs to be easy, cheap recipes that people can make as students. I imagine there's a lot online that you could probably access, but I think some of the basic skills of cooking actually are missing. And I mean, maybe that's something that again needs to be brought into an education system, is how just basic cooking classes, how people can make simple sauces, create food that's actually tasty with very little ingredients. Things like, I mean, I make it for my kids, like lentil dal. I mean, it's super easy, cheap, and nutritious and delicious, which is really important. But how many people have the confidence to do it? I think that's maybe something that again could be brought into this angle of supporting your well-being, is basic cooking from a kind of a cheap, just whole foods, simple ingredients background. I think that would also be really helpful for students.
Yeah, and I think that this also may differ per country and where you come from. I personally, when I started studying, I knew all my mom's Greek recipes, and I would just go ahead and make the simplest thing, which is like lentils or peas, and it's just very nutritious. You have all your greens and colorful vegetables that are necessary for your nutrition, and it's just very easy. It's cheap, and you can also make your meal planning for the week. Because usually what I also had my phases that I would just go on and eat pasta every day. Then I could see that besides the nutritious deficiency that it had, it was also the fact that I would feel very bloated. I wasn't feeling okay to work out. It was just a combination of factors that were just not helping me in my daily life. But I do think that nowadays it's just very simple, very easy to find those recipes online. We have the access, and I know that it's easier to get into fast food just because it's fast, it's easy, it's cheap. But then at the end of the day, making your own meals, it's actually quite cheaper than even fast food, because we're used to thinking that fast food is cheap. But then at the end of the day, it's not as cheap, and it's also not good for your health. So it's just better to, honestly, I would make a pot of lentils, but that's because I love lentils, but I would make a pot of lentils and have it for the rest of the week. And honestly, now that I'm here, I don't have access to a kitchen because they cook for us every day. And there too, I see that, of course, we have our soup and our salad bar every day, but then the main dishes are sometimes really lacking the nutritious value that you would expect such a high demanding institution to have, especially when they're telling us every day, take care of your health and take care of your nutrition and eat properly. Literally, we had burger with fries for lunch, and it's just not adding up.
Parity, isn't it, between what they're offering and what you're being told?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just, besides the instant noodles, which are also totally fine every once in a while, but there are lots of literally just get a bell pepper, a cucumber, and a tomato and olives, and you have a very nutritious.
Greek salad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And also a very good point on planning in advance, because planning your food in advance has certain perks. So the first perk, you can count your budget. Usually students are on the budget. So if you count in advance, you know exactly how much money you will probably need. You will go to the supermarket, you will compare pricing, you will take a look on good deals that can secure your productive grocery shopping. And also, if you don't have time, like I never have time in most cases to cook, but I think that you can basically Pavlov yourself into turning the cooking process into routine. It can also be a part of your mindfulness.
Yes.
For me, my day never starts before I don't cook my very simple and very trivial breakfast. So I can make 2 sandwiches, let's say with some cream cheese, with the avocado, which is not very pricey, by the way. And you can, I don't know, you can cut a half, for example, for one day, one breakfast, then another day, another half, and some fish. Or you can make some eggs, scrambled eggs, boiled eggs, whatever you prefer. Or I don't know whether a person who asked this question is a vegetarian or vegan or has any dietary restrictions, but you can also find the plant-based alternatives. And from my experience, they were not super expensive. Someone wrote avocado top tips. Thank you. But in fact, it also allows you not to overwhelm your brain with the thought, what should I cook now? Because it's time consuming. You will be Googling the receipts, and probably it will also take some time from other stuff that you need to do during your day. So plan in advance and just get it out of your head. And also, I know that it's very tempting to go on fast food, and I was doing that when I was a student. It didn't end up well. I also felt the fatigue over the time, and I also gained weight, which also didn't do me well because I was just compulsively eating because I was already stressing that I gained 5 kilos, 10 kilos, and I was like, oh my God, what should I do? Probably grab another burger. But you can get some porridge. You can experiment with cooking very, very simple food, which is usually not very expensive in the supermarkets, or I don't know, maybe you prefer to go to a local market, which also can secure you a better pricing. And just try different recipes. You might not like something very simple, but you can add some sauce. You can replace some ingredients, just adjust something for your own taste, and just think about that in a prospect of 5 years, 10 years, when your digestion might feel a bit different.
Yes, I think that's very true.
So yeah, just take care about that in advance and avoid compulsive walks to a cafeteria that will ruin your budget and your gut health. And another question, I think, Maria, that's addressed to you. What habits besides brushing and flossing should we start from? Scraping your tongue?
Scraping your tongue, yes, definitely scraping your tongue. I think a lot of it is technique. Like I was saying, toothbrushing technique is something that I always say an electric toothbrush is better. You have to be aware of positioning your toothbrush. You want to be positioning your toothbrush so the bristles are at 45 degrees, so you're meeting the bristles into your gum. So that border of your gum and your tooth is where the bacteria will collect, where the plaque will collect. So you want to make sure that every tooth you're meeting that 45-degree angle for a sufficient amount of time, at least 2 minutes, we always say. Yes, flossing. Again, flossing has a technique, or cleaning between your teeth with little brushes. You want to be cleaning along the tooth surface and cleaning it again into your gum, but you're not wanting to sort of seesaw and traumatize your gums. So it's technique sensitive. You also don't want to be scrubbing your teeth, which I think a lot of people come to me and they've been told in the past that you just scrub your teeth. You don't need to scrub your teeth, you need to brush accurately with a reasonable pressure, but not a very hard pressure. It's much more about technique rather than force. And yes, scraping your tongue, absolutely, there's bacterial load that will accumulate on your tongue. So shifting that every day, scraping that off, again, will just help to rebalance that load and shift the balance towards a more healthy and oral environment. So those three things. Mouthwashes, you don't necessarily need them. I think unless your dentist has mentioned it or prescribed one, generally you don't need them. So those three things, I think if you do well and you do regularly, brush your teeth twice a day at least, then that will help to ensure good oral health.
And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, Tanya, go ahead.
No, actually, I think that we've run out of questions, but we got a comment that I'm learning my dental care has been run after 27 years.
You're not alone.
Well, yeah, actually, I think that they're not teaching us well enough about hygiene and about oral dental healthcare. A lot, like, yeah, even if you're a kid and even if you're in a primary school, you're going to the dentist and they say, oh, okay, don't forget to brush your teeth. And that's pretty much it.
That's
This
it?
is yeah, that's it. Go away. But in fact, yeah, but there are so many more tips.
And as you say, it might be okay when you're young and you're brushing okay, but if you don't know the technique as you get older, it's going to get worse. And then you have these problems, and like, you know, after 27 years, you think you've been doing a good job, and suddenly your dentist says to you, no, actually, you haven't been brushing your teeth correctly. And it's really hard. It's really hard to hear that, because it's not necessarily your fault. It's you've never been subjected to the information. And I think there's a lot of just, oh, you know what to do, but actually there's a lot, I see it all the time, is people brushing their teeth in a way that is damaging to their mouth or ineffective. So yeah, I think just ask your dentist to show you, and just don't be embarrassed, because actually you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, so since we don't have any more questions, and someone writes, thanks a lot for the tips, I think that we can wrap it up. So I would like to thank you for all of your insights, for your time, and also those who were with us during this webinar for asking questions and sending hearts. I saw all heart and 100% reactions on the chat. So have a nice evening, everyone. And I think that we will record this webinar. So thanks a lot and bye.
Thank you.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Bye.